The plate shattered against the wall inches from my head, porcelain shards raining down like angry tears. I said, "Get out." Maria screamed, already reaching for another plate. "Anthony runs things now. We don't need you anymore." I stood my ground, watching my stepmother's face contort with rage. Behind her, my stepbrother Anthony smirked, already wearing the chef's coat that had belonged to my father. It had been his pride and joy for 30 years. Now it hung loose on Anthony's shoulders, the name Marcos stitched in faded gold thread across the pocket. My name is Isabella Romano, and until 2 months ago, I was the sous chef at Marcos, the Italian restaurant my father had built from nothing. I'd spent 15 years in that kitchen, starting as a dishwasher at 13, learning every recipe, every technique, every secret that made our food special. But now Dad was gone, and with him, everything I'd worked for. "You can't do this," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. "Dad wanted me to run the restaurant. Everyone knows that." Maria laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Everyone knows. Where's the proof? The will leaves everything to me, and I say Anthony's in charge now. You're just the help, and you're fired." I looked past her to Anthony, who was leaning against the prep station like he owned it. He'd shown up 6 months ago, right after Dad's diagnosis. Maria's 25-year-old son from her first marriage, suddenly interested in the family business after years of ignoring it. "You don't even know how to cook," I said to him. "You've never worked a day in this kitchen." He shrugged, adjusting my father's coat. "I'm a quick learner. Besides, how hard can it be? Follow the recipes, plate it nice, collect the money. Simple." Simple. The word hit me like another thrown plate. He had no idea what went into running Marcos. The pre-dawn trips to the market to select perfect ingredients. The hours of prep work, the carefully guarded family recipes, the relationships with suppliers built over decades. "The recipes," I said slowly, realization dawning. "You think you can just walk in and recreate Dad's food?" Maria's smile faltered slightly. "Don't be ridiculous. All the recipes are here in the kitchen. We don't need you to." "Those aren't the real recipes," I cut her off, feeling a small spark of satisfaction as her face paled. "Dad never wrote down the actual family recipes. He taught them to me, step by step, over years. What you have are the basic versions we give to prep cooks." "You're lying," Anthony snapped, but I saw the uncertainty in his eyes. "Am I? Try making Dad's marinara sauce from those recipe cards. See how it compares to what our customers expect. Or the tiramisu that won Best Dessert in Chicago 3 years running. Good luck matching that." Maria stormed forward, grabbing my arm. "You think you're so clever? We'll figure it out. Now get out of my restaurant before I call the police." I yanked my arm free, straightening my spine. "Your restaurant? Everything here, every dish, every technique, every secret that makes this place special, came from Dad. From our family, not yours." "Your family?" Maria's voice dripped with venom. "I was his wife. You're just his daughter from his first marriage. I have the papers, the will, everything. You have nothing." The words stung, but I refused to let them see me cry. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my father's lucky coin, the 1943 steel penny he carried every day since opening the restaurant. "Dad gave me this the night before he died," I said quietly. "Told me to keep it safe, that I'd know when to use it. I didn't understand then, but I do now." Maria's eyes fixed on the coin. "That belongs to the restaurant. Give it here." I closed my fingers around it, backing toward the door. "You have the restaurant, Maria, but Dad left me something more valuable than property or papers. When you figure out what that is, you'll know where to find me." I walked out of Marco's for the last time, ignoring Maria's shouts behind me. The late afternoon sun painted the Chicago streets gold, the same color as the thread on my father's chef's coat. Tears finally came as I reached my car, but I wiped them away quickly. Dad had taught me more than recipes. He taught me patience, persistence, and planning. Most importantly, he taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to come back stronger. I started the engine, watching Anthony and Maria argue through the restaurant's front window. They thought they'd won, that they'd taken everything from me, but Dad's last lesson was still to come, and they had no idea what was heading their way. 3 months after being thrown out of Marco's, I stood in my tiny apartment kitchen, perfecting the last details. The marinara sauce simmered on the stove, its aroma bringing back memories of countless mornings beside my father, learning the exact moment to add each ingredient. My phone buzzed. A text from Nina, my best friend who'd been a waitress at Marco's for a decade before Maria fired her too. It's bad, Bella. Really bad. They lost the Rossini wedding booking. I wasn't surprised. The Rossini family had been loyal customers for 20 years, celebrating every milestone at Marco's. But according to Nana's regular updates, the restaurant was hemorrhaging longtime patrons. Anthony's simplified versions of Dad's recipes weren't fooling anyone. Another text, Maria's desperate. She's trying to hire her way out of it. Third chef this month. I smiled, stirring the sauce. Let them scramble. The timing was perfect. The coin Dad gave me, his lucky steel penny, sat on my counter beside a worn leather notebook. I'd found it the day after his funeral, hidden in his old recipe box where he told me to look. Inside were his real recipes, written in his careful hand, along with something else. The deed to a small storefront 3 blocks from Marco's. For my Isabella, the note had read, "Sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. Love, Dad." The storefront had been empty for years, but Dad had kept paying the rent quietly, planning ahead even as his health failed. Now, after months of late nights and every penny of my savings, it was almost ready. My phone rang. An unknown number. Isabella Romano. I answered, though I already knew who it was. "Miss Romano." The voice was smooth, professional. "This is James Wheeler from the Chicago Restaurant Association. I'm calling about the nomination." "Yes, Mr. Wheeler. The committee has reviewed your application for the Rising Star Chef competition. We're intrigued by your concept. A modern take on traditional Italian cuisine, you said." I looked around my test kitchen, at the recipes I'd spent months adapting and perfecting. Dad's classics with my own twists, honoring tradition while embracing innovation. "That's right," I replied. "Everything made from scratch, using techniques passed down through generations." "Fascinating," Wheeler said, "especially given your background at Marco's. I understand there's been quite a change in management there recently." "You could say that." "Well, Miss Romano, the committee would like to invite you to compete. The event is in 6 weeks. The winner, as you know, receives significant press coverage and investment funding." I gripped the phone tighter. "I'll be there." After hanging up, I picked up Dad's coin, running my thumb over its worn surface. The competition would put me head-to-head with Chicago's best up-and-coming chefs. More importantly, it would put me in a spotlight, exactly where I needed to be. My phone buzzed again. "Nina, you won't believe this. Anthony just tried to make Dad's ossobuco for a food critic. It was a disaster. The review goes live tomorrow." Perfect timing indeed. The next morning, the Chicago Tribune's scathing review of Marco's went viral. A pale imitation of its former glory, the critic wrote. "Whatever magic made Marco's special has vanished, replaced by mediocrity and pretension." I was in my new kitchen when Maria finally called. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight with forced politeness. "About what?" "The recipes. The real ones. Name your price." I laughed softly. "They're not for sale, Maria. Neither is Dad's legacy." "Don't be stupid," she snapped, her facade cracking. "This is business. Everything has a price." "Not everything," I replied. "But don't worry. You'll be seeing me soon enough." I hung up before she could respond, returning to my prep work. The Rising Star competition was 5 weeks away, and I had a statement to make. In his notebook on the last page, Dad had written something that I now understood. "Success is the best revenge, but timing is everything. Wait until they're desperate, then show them what they threw away." The night of the Rising Star competition arrived. Chicago's culinary elite packed into the grand ballroom of the Palmer House. 8 chef stations lined the walls, mine positioned directly across from the judges' table. I tied on my apron, simple black cotton, no flashy logos or names. Just the steel penny, now fashioned into a pin, catching the light. "Chef Romano." A judge approached my station. "Your menu concept is interesting. Reimagined Italian classics." I nodded, arranging my ingredients. "My father's recipes adapted for modern tastes." "Your father?" His eyes widened with recognition. "Marco Romano." Before I could answer, a commotion erupted at the entrance. Maria and Anthony burst in, her face flushed with anger. "She can't compete," Maria shouted, pointing at me. Those are our recipes, our property. The room fell silent. Head Judge Wheeler stepped forward, frowning. Mrs. Romano, this is a private event. If you have concerns. I have proof, Maria interrupted, waving a folder. Documents showing I own all rights to Marco's recipes and techniques. I continued prepping, letting her make a scene. Everything was going exactly as planned. Mrs. Romano, Wheeler said firmly, this competition judges original interpretations of classical cuisine. Chef Isabella's menu, while inspired by her father's work, consists of her own creations. Let them stay, I called out, not looking up from my station. Let them watch. Wheeler hesitated, then nodded. Security escorted Maria and Anthony to seats near the judge's table. Over the next 2 hours, I cooked with a focus I'd inherited from my father. Each dish was a tribute and a transformation. His marinara sauce lightened with roasted cherry tomatoes. His ossobuco reimagined with short ribs and modern plating. When I presented my final course, tiramisu deconstructed into elegant components, I heard gasps from the judges. Even Maria had fallen silent. This is, Wheeler took another bite, closing his eyes. It's Marco's tiramisu, but elevated. Familiar yet completely new. I smiled, touching the penny on my apron. My father taught me that tradition isn't about freezing the past. It's about carrying it forward. The judges conferred briefly. Wheeler stood. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our winner, Chef Isabella Romano. The applause was thunderous. As cameras flashed, I saw Maria and Anthony slip toward the exit. But I wasn't done. Thank you, I said into the microphone. 3 months ago, I lost my place in my father's kitchen. But he left me something more valuable than a restaurant. He left me his knowledge, his techniques, and his dream of evolution. I turned to face the crowd. That's why I'm proud to announce the opening of Nuevo Marcos. Not a replacement for the original, but a continuation of his legacy. A place where tradition meets innovation, where the past guides us into the future. The room erupted again. Restaurant critics mobbed me with questions about the opening date. Investors pressed cards into my hands. Later that night, alone in my new restaurant space, I raised a glass to Dad's photo. You planned this all along, didn't you? I whispered. Knew they'd push me out, knew I'd need to make my own way. The next morning, Nina sent one final update. Maria had listed Marco's for sale. Without the real recipes, without the soul that Dad had infused into every dish, they couldn't keep it alive. 6 months later, Nuevo Marcos opened to rave reviews. The line stretched around the block, old customers mixing with new fans. The steel penny hung above the door, watching over a packed dining room where tradition and innovation danced on every plate. Maria and Anthony disappeared from Chicago's restaurant scene. Last I heard, they'd moved to Florida to try their luck there. But their failure wasn't my victory, my success was. Dad's notebook sits in my office now, its pages annotated with my own notes and adaptations. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine him watching me in the kitchen, smiling as I teach my own staff the proper way to make marinara sauce. Not exactly the way he taught me, but close enough that his legacy lives on. And in the end, that's what he wanted all along, not for me to preserve the past, but to carry it forward into the future. Every night before service, I touch the steel penny above the door and whisper, Grazie, Papa. Thank you for teaching me that the greatest revenge isn't destroying what others build, it's building something better of your own. That's a lesson worth more than any recipe.